I'm here with Dpei. We're in the off season. Pretty much most of the roster deals are done at this point. So we have sort of like a status quo, what's going on right now. But we of course want to know what's going on with you. Are you back on the TFT grind?
Yeah, I've been just kind of figuring out life stuff. Have to like move out. It's also the holiday season, so trying to figure out like travel plans and also seeing family plans. So I've been kind of trying to relax for the first time in a long time, I guess. So that's pretty interesting.
You usually did pretty bursty work, right? Like you went hard 9 months of the year and then had like 3 months where you took it a little slower. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I guess it depends on how long the off season is. This off season was really truncated, like right after grand finals, a week after, boom, there's like deadlines to hit. So, uh in other off seasons it was much less, and then it was just kind of a holiday time in and maybe like 1 month off. So, or like completely to myself type of thing. So, yeah, it is kind of like almost like being a teacher, right? You get your summer break. I guess we just get our winter break as coaches, is roughly the thing.
Yeah, for sure. Would you have liked to see like maybe a signing window break after the season, given that we don't even know what the game is like? Do you think that makes sense?
Yeah, I talked to John about it actually, but because contracts are expiring at a certain point, right? And then you need to pick up options at a certain point due to the contract. Uh, there's nothing they can really do. Like logistically, it makes sense. They just weren't expecting this timeline, and then they pushed back grand finals for COVID things, right? So it made sense. It just ended up being really crappy for those involved, but understandable. I know John himself hasn't had much of a break either, too. So it's
Yeah,
just
for
how it
sure.
is, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Now we want to review a little bit of your last season, of course. And I guess as a sort of hindsight approach now, how satisfied are you with the results of this season? Because technically speaking, that was probably the most successful season the Gladiators had, right?
Yeah, I think this season two was by far the most competitive. I think every year it's getting more and more competitive. You look at season one to now, you look at the quality of players, quality of teams, quality of coaches. All these things have gotten so much better from season one, right? Crazy better. Um, and I mean, I'm really happy and really proud of our team and our team accomplishments. I think the results are great. You know, getting a result is great. You know, one tournament win is great. But I really feel like our process to that was the important part, right? Like, I think if we didn't win, I don't know if I could be saying this, but if we didn't win, I think I'd still be happy because we built like a great team culture, great team environment, and we really felt like a real team at the end. Whereas I know sometimes teams kind of implode or make massive changes. I feel like this team, had we stuck on Overwatch 1, we probably all would have stuck together as much as possible.
For sure. Now, you had a base to build on after season 3. And then into season 4. Like, off seasons for you guys must have always been pretty chaotic. How would you rate like the off season between season 3 and season 4?
Yeah, going into season 4, I think by far was the best off season. We had a lot of time. I think I had I think a month between, because we got out so early actually, and then there was the COVID thing of needing to travel to Korea, and then grand finals. Like, there was like an extended month break or something that me and the rest of the staff could take so that we could be mentally ready for the off season, and we could think about the off season individually. And then we could come together, and we had like a great off season, I think, from a planning standpoint. Going into season 4, we had like contingency plan, we had risky plans. There were like a lot of plans, and like there was like a clear plan A, plan B, plan C, plan breaking terms of emergency type of thing that we were discussing. I think I literally have like a whiteboard. I bought a whiteboard, writing down our options, and flip the whiteboard and be like, okay, here's option B, blah 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 blah. So it was like, and it was very collaborative. I remember that we were talking every day that we needed to. Me and Face were roommates at the time. We would just go knock on each other's door and bother each other with like, hey, okay, I thought about it. What about this guy? Type of thing. So it was like a really great off season in terms of structure and planning going into this off season, and I think we ended up building like a really good team too.
I think one of the most surprising finds you guys had, which a lot of people didn't catch apparently in terms of even the scouts, is Skewed. Like, probably, arguably the best Brig this season. Of course, Brig played a pretty big role. How did you guys land on this guy?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so Face, I got to give a huge credit to Face. I always credit him with his scouting. People don't know, but we ran internal scrims in season 2 because we had, a huge roster in season 2. That we had 4 people sitting on the bench. We wanted to just add 2 more and make sure that we could scrim internally for warm-ups or for, we just want like a third block scrim or something like that. So we actually got to see a lot of players we were interested in either down the line or, for next season with those internals. So Skewed, we actually had experience with like seeing how he plays, seeing what he does, way beforehand. So we had already scouted him on the ladder, saw what he was doing, and then we're able to see him in scrims in these like internals, which were essentially like future tryouts if you think about it. So going into that, like we knew what Skewed would provide, especially at the value he had. Like you said, under the radar. It's someone that we don't really have to like pay a lot. People think Glads have like this insane budget, and we do have like a good budget relative to most teams, but it's not infinite, right? We have to spend on our star players, and then we have to like, take risks with other players or, find undervalued players. And Skewed was that really undervalued player that came with a great value price to his name. And then we also knew he was going to, I felt like he was going to be exceptional on Brig. We were looking really hard on Brig because we felt like we had lackluster Brig play last year, meaning season 3. So that was something, and we knew we thought Brig was going to be very, very important. I've always signed 3 flex supports because I always thought, a double flex support meta will show up. So Skewed was an easy get because his Brig was really exceptional, and then he's a great Korean flex support that did really well in BAP metas in Korea because his team usually ran Lucio, BAP, Rhine, D.Va, the rushed comp. So he was like much more a known quantity, but his, peak end wasn't really for sure. I thought he was going to be a good Brig. I didn't know he'd be the best Brig.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I mean, you guys signed a couple of other heavy hitters, especially like now. I think he got Rollstar, was definitely in the talk. Also, one of the sort of outside MVP's choices. I think that one must have been highly contested, right? Shu was probably something you had to fight for.
Shu is someone that we really, really wanted. He was a top choice. We feel like there's these flex supports that they can just win the game off their aim, right? Like their aim is actually worth talking about. I think Violet is like one of those people. And like for us, it was like, Shu Violet at the time was potentially a free agent. Shu Violet were like right there. Violet went back to Shock, and we knew we had to go for Shu. That is a win condition for our off season, right? Going any lower than that is just not, our season doesn't look the same, and that's really, really clear to us. So that was a huge get for us, and we were really strategic about getting him basically, and made sure that we got in at the right windows and made sure that we talked to him early, built relationships with him and stuff like that. So it was really important that we got Shu specifically. So, we said, there are some players that you need to spend a lot, some players that you need to get value out of, and some players that you need to spend on. Shu was someone we needed to go and spend on, make sure that we could get him here type of thing. So for Shu to, he has some problems with Korean teams because of his boosting pass, which is definitely not a problem for us because, it was such a small mistake in, I don't even know how many years ago, 3-4 years ago. And like really, really small, like 1 week of boosting type of thing. It's trivial. So yeah, that thing maybe made it easier for us to get him versus, Korean teams.
For sure. Now, expert evaluation of your team seemed really high. A lot of people had you at least like top 3. Some had them in first place. Like you guys appear to have great scrim bugs. What was your kind of like reception of that? Was there anything to that? And how were you thinking about those at the time?
I think people see our roster and we get. Face told me this actually. It's like I hate doing the old Gladiators way, which is like getting big names and paying them a lot, and then like making our team seem really hype when really we got overpriced players, and that was a thing of the past. I think we correctly assessed like people's ability and like what made a good team. So I kind of see why the community rates us so highly, but at the same time, I always want to underrate our team because, I don't want this heavy expectation, but at the same time, I want a roster that can win. So it was a good feeling. We did have those scrim bucks. Like, I don't have the stats in front of me, but I know that our win rate throughout the year, and even May Melee was like 75 to 80% on map win rate, which is, if you think about in the course of a five map series, that's like even higher than the actual win rate. So it was a really, really good win rate. And that's why our scrim bucks were so high. Everyone's like, wow, Gladiator's so scary, Gladiator's so scary. But I think when we got to actual matches, you have to be a real team there. It was clear that we were getting better strategically, better like from a coaching standpoint, from like a progression standpoint, from a strategic standpoint, but we didn't have that, team chemistry that we needed. We didn't have that match experience that we needed as a team. So I think fair, but also a little unfair, just because we all are, we had a lot of returners, but a lot of new guys as well.
Felt like the way the community evaluated you sort of was quickly slanted by the week 1 results where you guys lost, and then only slowly recovered when your results got better. And I mean, in the end, you were second highest in the NA standings. How did you guys perceive that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we care too much about what the community says. Like, I know I personally don't. Not that I don't value fans. It's just, they don't really know what's going on the inside, and that's fine. It's fun as a fan to speculate. That's what you do. You love your team. You start speculating. Why are they shit? Like that. Yeah. That's perfectly reasonable. Like, what else are sports for other than for entertainment, right? And that's a hot gossip of entertainment, no? So I'm totally fine with it. But as someone in the team, it's not something you focus on, right? You just know what's going on, and then you work on the progression of these things. You have to make pivots as a coach, like, hey, I know we were focusing on strategy, on fundamentals here, but here now we need to focus on teamwork, team culture, stuff like that. And maybe you don't say that outright. Maybe you make different pivots as time goes along. And I felt like we always learned a lesson after a stage. We always committed in a direction after a stage, and that was really important. And then, we looked at that, evaluated as coaches, as a team, and been like, oh, did that work? Yeah. Okay. Maybe this is better too, because we were like, we got this, but we also saw this weakness, and it's like, yeah, we probably can't all in just on team culture. We need to give them, more strategy, or, hey, we can't, just talk about team strategy. We got to also talk about our mental game going into these clutch matches, type of thing. So we are always able to pivot. We are always able to improve. Is kind of like the important part to me as a team.
Yeah. Now, progression rarely is or feels linear. There's usually like little events where one in hindsight can attach to like massive jumps in terms of relative performance, and then slugs where it doesn't really improve that quickly. Do you have any moments in time during this season in mind where you went like, wow, that gave us like a quantum leap of improvement?
Yeah, I think at the beginning of each stage, we kind of like learned a lesson, like I was talking about. So stage 1, we had these like high expectations. Like, I think, I say I don't care what the community thinks, but I know the players, read Reddit, read Inven, whatever it is, they care about community perception a lot. And they had these really high expectations of what we were supposed to be able to achieve. And then boom, we got slapped in the face with an 0-2 against 2 teams that we performed really well against in scrims. 2 very good teams, Shock and Fuel, don't get me wrong. But that was a big lesson point for me, was, hey guys, don't go in with these expectations. Make sure, hey, if we're nervous, we got to like talk about this as a team and solve this as a team in the game. This is what it means to solve it in the game. We got to talk to each other in the game. We have to be lighter in the game. We have to make sure that we're giving feedback to people. Being honest is really important in and out of game. Like, I don't want problems happening in scrims, like, teammate problems happening in scrims, and then it shows up in a match type of thing. We have to be really open and honest about it. Boom, there's like a turning point. We go 2-0 in the next one. We don't make Melee, but going into June Joust, we learned that lesson, and we can recall back to that moment, right? And be like, hey guys, remember, we don't ever want to be like the Melee Gladiators, right? Yeah. And then they'll remember it, type of thing. And we keep reinforcing that. Stage 2, we wanted to make sure that we had like clear styles going into stage 2. And that was just something that we as coaches felt like, okay, we want to be a really aggressive team. We know mentally sometimes it's very hard to to know what we do because we've been saying, hey, do this or you can do this. We give our players a lot of options in stage 1. Stage 2, boom, gave them like less options and was like, we're always going to do the aggressive play. We're going to be brain dead aggressive. That way, if your guys' mind shut off in the middle of the game, you guys know what plan A is. It's the only plan. It's go aggressive, find a way to be aggressive, and that was something we learned, and that played to our play style. It was a fun play style to play. We talked about how to make things work. That was like really important for us. But realistically, you can't do that all the time. We become very predictable, and maybe that's one of our flaws as a team is being too aggressive. But my coaching style, I would always rather be more aggressive than not. Going into the next ones, it was just mental game in these clutch situations. And those are harder to describe, but we had to build like a team culture for that. And that was just, something happening from stage 1 on. So you see these things, and to me, the progression was like very linear, but you're right that there were these like key moments that you want to make sure that you recall back on and be like, guys, remember the Washington game, remember the, shock in Dallas week 1, you can recall to those moments, those players will remember and they'll be ready to fix it too. So the progression was like very linear for us, but I was really, really happy with it.
Right. Now, sort of like a milestone event, I guess, for as to how hyped it was by the community was the eventual joining of Capster with you guys in NA. Now, did it feel like such a monumental event when he finally came over, or did it feel natural almost immediately?
I think it was like I was talking about before. It's one of those landmarks, but at the same time, it was a progression. For one, like I know we booked his flight and everything, but like I was really confident he was getting there, but people around me were like, I don't know if he's actually coming, but I was really confident. Kev wants to win. I talked to him about it. I'm like, I know he wants to win. I'm not gonna try to push him, to come over here. He's clearly anxious about it. I want to make sure that I trust him and that he comes over here, and we're gonna start the relationship with a huge amount of trust. I'm not gonna baby him through it all the way, but I'm gonna try to help him through it. With like talking to his mom, whatever it may be, right? So once he got here, I think that was a turning point, not in the sense that anything really changed once he got here, but it's that we could start progressing as a real team. Seeing your teammate in person is huge. I was talking to Kevin in season 3, and I was like, I really want you over here, and he was like, why? Like the ping's not that bad. Like especially when we play East, he's like, why can't I just stay home? And I was like, no, it's really important to build the team culture, get to know your teammates. If you guys are close out of the game, you'll learn to trust each other in the game. We can give better feedback, all this stuff. And, more importantly, you can grow as a person, right? Like that was really important for me. Like I know Kev has trouble expressing himself and doing stuff like that. But, in person, it's going to be a lot easier to talk to someone in person about how they're feeling and stuff like that. So I think that was like a really big moment, and we could just kind of talk to him and work with him. And then also he got to gel with the team. I told him too, he can help be part of the great team environment that he wants to be a part of. He's like this goofy kid who's always throwing around the ball, like, being silly and stuff like that. He literally always has a ball in his hand, and he adds like levity to our group, which was, it's small, but it's big, for our team culture. So he understands that now. I talked to him recently. He understands that now, and he's really happy, he tried something new, got to explore. And as a coach, as a person, I'm really happy about that.
Now, one person that was a very hyped signing, but at the same time, I guess it's also a meta thing where like you can be one of the best players on your relative position, and then like a patch comes in or like a meta switches, and now you're perma-benched, right? So you guys, of course, picked up Moth. And it feels like from a perception point of view that because he was stuck behind a rookie that, yes, performed very well, that his career took a hit. Would you agree with that assumption at the moment? Or how do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, definitely it probably did take a hit, right? To be honest, if you're not playing for the majority of a year, it sucks. And I've talked to Moth a lot, and I tell him all the time, I know he's a championship quality player for sure. It just his hero pool didn't really fit our team, and I think I tried to like incorporate him as much as possible because I really loved his attitude, what he brought to review, what he brings to scrims, adding to our mental game a lot. It's just it didn't line up with our strengths as a team, right? We can play Lucio, but we weren't the best Lucio team in the region by far, right? Like if we go Lucio, Moira, Winston, uh, that's something that fits Muse's strengths, but not really our DPS's strengths nearly as much, or even Shu's strength. Like Shu's, Fielder is like an insane Moira, to be honest. And are we going to be the best team in that region playing Lucio Moira when Dallas Fuel exists in our region? No. We go to like Lucio Ryan. Muse isn't that great on Ryan. Kev hates May. We know these things for sure. Sure, Shu loves BAP, but like, is this something that we can be top in our region in? And the answer is no again, because Shock exists, Rain exists. Again, Fuel still exists, those crazy people. They're great on every Lucio comp, This wasn't our win condition as a team. And he understood that, like, if we're gonna win, we're gonna have to take these bigger risks, these stylistic risks. And that's why we were the sole dive team in NA. We were the random Chengdu Hunters, the random Shanghai Dragons in NA. And that really sucks for someone like Moth, because that fits Skewed's hero pool a lot better, right? So it's really unfortunate, and I wish that wasn't the case, that his perception of his skill has gone down. I love Moth, and I think he's like a great player, a great person, a great teammate. Like, would love to have him on any team, to be honest, and I hope it didn't, but I know it does. It's hard to say that it doesn't.
From the way people explain Moth to me, it seems like he's like the type of guy that would be a perfect shoe-in for a coaching career, right?
I feel like coaching is a lot different from playing and leading in the game, like vastly different. I think it depends on the team, though, what style of coaches they have. Maybe it just doesn't fit with, what I would imagine, but I always think player coaches are really interesting, but they need time to develop. They need the EQ skills to develop. They also need to be able to getting a player to stop playing and instead like just watch hours and hours and hours of VODs is like much different, right? Studying the game versus playing the game is so much different. A lot of players don't transition. A lot of great players don't transition well to coaching. Michael Jordan probably isn't the best coach. He will never, he's not going to coach, right? He goes to ownership of a team and, he's still like, at that, to be honest. So it's not the same skill set in general, but Moth is one of the people that I would have higher confidence in, just because I know him as a person. And then I think his, skills are there for sure. His EQ skills are there and his IQ skills are there if he wanted to. And that's a whole other thing of like I said, do you really want to coach the game, or do you have that itch to play the game? It's really hard to get rid of that itch once you're a player,